Corey Bellemore, welcome to Hobby of a Lifestyle.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'm excited to get into this and yeah, thankful to be on.
I think I might be more excited, and I think some of my friends who I was telling you were coming onto the podcast might be as well. Corey, do you just want to tell people what you're best known for?
Best known for a thing called the beer mile. So I hold the world record in it. It's exactly what you think. It's combining a mile of racing and running with some beer drinking. So you start off
It's
with a beer, 355 milliliters, 12 fluid ounces, has to be 5% alcohol, and then chug a beer, as crazy as it sounds, before the run starts. And then you do a lap of the track, and you do that 4 consecutive times. So 4 beers, 4 laps, mile of racing at the end of it, and
it's
3 pounds of beer in your stomach.
oh, I mean, I can't wait to kind of get into that, discover more about that journey. I was watching, I was trying to comprehend the feeling it must be like. I mean, well, first of all, as I said just before we started recording, I was trying to get my head around the speed of how fast you run this. I mean, just for listeners, so they know, or people who are watching, 4 minutes 28 seconds for a mile, including drinking 4 beers, is I genuinely couldn't drive it that fast. Never mind run it. I think if I was running a beer mile, you're probably looking at about 30 minutes for me.
Yeah,
Especially if I'm having beers. That is
it's
incredible.
pretty
I mean,
mad.
oh, it's incredible. Let's go back then. So as a child, kind of where did you grow up and what were you into as a child?
So I didn't play any organized sports. I had two other siblings growing up. So I had a twin brother and then an older sister.
Right.
And honestly grew up playing like neighborhood sports with friends. So nothing super organized
Okay.
until I was about 12 years old. And then that's when I joined basketball was actually my first love. So I
Right.
actually started playing travel basketball, organized basketball, loved it. Was a short little wee guy at the time.
Right.
So
Yeah, not no.
that dream was short-lived, but I used to love racing against my brother in the backyard, racing against our dog in the backyard,
Right.
and that's sort of where love and enjoyment for going as fast as my body would let me came from. And yeah, I always loved that feeling. So as soon as I had the opportunity to join the cross country team or the Harrier team in grade three, or it was actually the tail end of grade two that the coach let me come out.
Right.
That's when I found a real true passion for it and a love for it. And it's met where I met a lot of friends, traveled to a lot of places,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah, I was able to be competitive and fulfill that.
I mean, you look at the pace you're running at, and it's phenomenal. You seen the fact that the coach that you win at the end of grade two, beginning of grade three, you must have felt there was something there, and the coaches must have seen there was something there early on. Because this is, yes, I know you can train and you can train to be, but this is more natural talent surely than just being actually I went to a running club and I was running really fast.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a huge talent aspect. I think as you go up in distance, the ability to work hard and have consistent years under your belt is the defining factor, but
Yeah,
ultimately you have to have a large amount of talent. So I think ultimately I saw success early on that sort of kept me coming back. And I think my love and enjoyment grew from there. But I think originally what gravitated me towards the sport was like I thought I was a sprinter. I did well at that part of it at the time.
right.
But as I got older and older, I realized middle distance was my sweet spot.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, I was an 800-meter runner actually growing up
Okay.
from grade seven till pretty much middle through university, and then slowly transitioned to 1500 slash the mile.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about that, and we've had so many people from North America on in the past who where the sports actually paid for them to go to scholarship or they've competed at a really high level over in the States or in Canada. What level were you competing at? Because I look at these times now and think, wow, these are fantastic. I mean, I think is it a 357 mile that you actually run?
Yeah, so 357, I ran that outdoors and indoors as well.
Wow.
So actually ran it in Ireland at the Cork City Games. in 2018 right off a flight. So that
Wow.
was super cool experience. But yeah, I mean, run sub four a handful of times, and I honestly like. I think my first national team I made in 2012 was as a junior. Made a few teams as a junior, and then the highest level I got to was the World University Games. So it's actually the se second biggest international competition aside
Yeah.
from the Olympics. So you had 30,000 athletes from basketball to tennis to track, you name it, that the sports are there. And yeah, it was a incredible experience in Taiwan to do that.
Wow. I mean, at what point did you start taking it really serious? Because you talk about the fact that you went to World University Games, and again, you don't qualify for those unless you're performing week in, week out. You're obviously one of the best in the country now. You're on a national team. At what point did someone take you to the side, or did you say it's that light bulb moment? Actually, I really need to focus now because these things are now becoming an opportunity where it's the realization is there. I can actually be an international athlete.
I think that came from probably, I think high school more or less. I took it as like I had a coach that just really emphasized like having fun, having other things to keep you going. Um, he undertrained me in a sense, but he really wanted me to sort of see running as an outlet and a fun thing.
Yeah,
Even though I was taking it seriously and being competitive. So I think once I hit grade 10, that's when I started like getting a bit better. I hit a huge growth spurt. I actually became like from a 3K runner to an 800 runner because I
yeah.
think I was 206 in grade 9. Grade 10, I was 157. So improved
Well,
roughly, yeah, 8 to 10 seconds in the event. And then as I got to university, it was like, okay, I can get provincial funding from running track. Um, I can make national teams or get close to those standards.
yeah.
And then I was a junior national gold medalist
Wow.
my first year in out of university. So the summer of my first year, I achieved gold in 800, and I think that's where I started like thinking I could do more and continue to get those times down and make more Canadian teams.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so honestly, the love of travel, the love of competing, and the camaraderie of like friendships and meeting people and experiencing new cultures, that's honestly what kept me coming back.
Well,
I love the
yeah.
sport and the training and stuff, but I think there's so many other aspects of what that brought me that kept me coming back.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I actually met my wife through my sport. And although you look at the medals that you've won and you look at all the different things, it's actually those experiences and it's the friendships that I've gained, or, as I say, I met my wife through my sport. So it's actually the love that I gained as well. Um, you do get more from it, but you're talking about the university in winning national gold medals. All of a sudden, when you win a national gold, and you already mentioned kind of the second biggest games other than the Olympic games that you're playing, did the Olympics start creeping into your mind? Was it a case of actually, I've won a national championship. Why can't I push on to that level?
Yeah, it really consumed me for a long time. Like, I mean, going into university, the coach I had, I went to one of the best Canadian track and field programs. I went to the University of Windsor. We had a very decorated coach, and then he coached multiple Olympians.
Wow.
And the person before me that he coached that was the Canadian record holder in the 800, Melissa Bishops. She was Olympic medalist, or sorry, she was fourth, but she was second at the World Championships the year
Right,
previous.
right.
So she was an incredible runner. I knew he had success with her, really trusted the coach. And then obviously from that moment on, as I started getting better and better, developing more and more, I think the Olympics thought that and being an Olympian sort of over-consumed me to a sense. It became like basically the only thing that mattered, I think.
Right,
And in
okay.
2016, I was actually 1.4 seconds away from Olympics in the 800. I was fourth
Wow.
at trials, so you had to be top three. So there's a few things I was very, very close. And then
Yeah,
as I went into 2020, that was like my end all be all goal.
yeah, yeah.
And then COVID and injuries and a lot of like, yeah, a lot of setbacks along the way.
Yeah, there's a lot of fortune involved with this, isn't it? I'm not the biggest word of user of the word luck. I don't really believe in luck, but it's fortunate chance, and as you say, you pick up one injury and it depending on when it is, it can really hamper these things. Talk about that consuming you there to the point where it was almost your sole drive and focus. And I think it's really interesting. Do you think because you were so focused and so driven, it almost hampered you a little bit in that pursuit?
Yeah, I think it changed my why. Like my original why for the sport was because it was fun, because I was pushing my body, because I was meeting new friends and traveling. And then when the Olympic mindset and just wanting to be an Olympian, that's the only thing that mattered. My why changed to I have to focus on a certain time. I have to, you know, sacrifice a lot more and not see my friends as much and really focus on recovery and the things that like made life fun. I kind of just put so much into track and so much into athletics that I think I was missing out a lot of other things that also help ease stress and help make my
Yeah.
recovery better. So it's just counterintuitive, I think, when you focus on one thing singularly.
How did you cope with that? How did you deal with that once it come to 2020 and you realize that actually that dream is maybe is no longer going to come to fruition because of just circumstance, unfortunately, like you say, with COVID and whatnot, and all of a sudden, how do you accept that when you've maybe had a 4 year cycle? Where you talk from 2016 being so close, a four and it's been highlighted to the Olympians that we spoke to on the show is it's not just a 1 year program. It's literally a 4 year cycle that you're working for in order to achieve a dream of representing your country at the Olympics. What kind of coping mechanisms did you have in place for that?
Um, well, yeah, with a 4 year like cycle, you're always thinking so far ahead on that one singular moment, the defining moment. And I think getting past that and thinking like future wise, what do you want to do in life? What do you sort of want to keep you going? Do you want to focus on a career? Do you want to stay in athletics? Do you
Yeah,
want to try and do both? I think that was my biggest thing. So I think after 2020, it was like more or less I moved to Arizona because the Olympics got postponed to 2021.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so I moved to Arizona, stayed with a friend there, lived there for 6 months. I was coming off injury, so I was trying to make the most of the situation, and everything in Canada, especially meets, were all shut down.
Yeah.
Um, so I just, yeah, put my best foot forward, did a lot of cross training, did things I usually wouldn't do in terms of like getting ready and getting prepared. I couldn't do as much running because my body just had no base to rely on. So it was a lot of swimming, a lot of biking, and then I got into key workouts running wise, but I don't think I had enough base fitness to keep the longevity for the season.
Okay.
So trials went poorly that year, and then it was more or less take some downtime, enjoy some time with family and friends, and then sort of see what you wanted to do next. And what I wanted to do next was like pursue a career and build my base for foundation of life outside of athletics. Um, and that was sort of my goal at the time. So um,
Was the way you talk about then describing it, and I could be wrong in reading into this a little bit, but it almost feels like once that once COVID happened and there was an obstacle that was no longer your fault, it wasn't just injury anymore. It was almost there's that relief's there. Actually, I'm not just working for something anymore. I can now, the fact that you're saying that you haven't got time to spend 6 months in Arizona, you've got to spend more time with family and friends. Was it almost a relief for you to go, I don't have to think about this anymore, actually, that it's kind of been taken out of my hands now and I can just, as you say, prepare for the next chapter in my journey?
yeah, and ultimately like find a healthy place for athletics to be. So it's like it's not like I gave up on being competitive or
You
or,
know?
or gave up on training hard or anything like that. It was just more or less like let's take some of this focus and also put it and divide it and balance it into other aspects of life.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that made that makes me healthier from a mindset. It makes my mindset healthier, makes me physically feel better, and takes the stress away from just focusing on just trying to achieve a time. And
Yeah,
there's no there's fun in the pursuit, but there's no fun in just like having one thing stuck in your head.
of course, of course. And be a mile. Then. Let's get to, because we've talked about the journey. You've represented your country at a world. How did you get on the World Games, by the way, the University Games?
So the World University Games, so I had to achieve a certain standard and then be ranked within the top two of the 1,500-meter athletes that were still in university or year out. So yeah, I had to be highly ranked nationally, and then they chose the team based on that. And then we went
Wow,
to Taipei, Taiwan
wow.
for 2 weeks' time, and it was an incredible experience for sure.
What was that standout experience for you from that? What was the highlight of that trip? Because we talked to so many athletes who go to some amazing places around the world, but actually never really get the opportunity, or very rarely get the opportunity to enjoy the place that they've been to see, because they're competing and that's the sole focus. So, do you have a standout memory from that competition?
Um, I think the hospitality and the people of Taiwan, like it was incredible, even from us being on our phone, being lost in the public transit and locals coming over that spoke enough English to help us get to where we were going
Right.
or took time out of their day to come with us on the train, take us to the next stop we were trying to
Wow.
go. So I just felt I think the biggest standout thing was how welcoming that culture, the culture of Taiwan and the people of Taiwan were. Um, so different from us in terms of like everyday life, food,
Yeah.
um, uh, the landscape, everything. It was just very unique to me. So I think just how different things were, but how at home you felt in that setting.
Wow. No, it's phenomenal. Really, really good. So you've competed World Games. You've had that phenomenal experience. You've been a national champion. Well, how do you even discover a beer mile? When does this, when does it, because am I right in thinking it started where you're from in Canada?
Yeah, so the rules originated in the late 80s, early 90s
Right,
at a university just 6 hours down the road from here, Queen's University, and the original rules were called the Kingston Cup or
right.
Kingston rules, because Queen's University is in a place called Kingston, Ontario.
Okay.
So, yeah, they started it, and back then it was like underground thing, just fun. People would go to meets throughout the season and be like, "Oh, I ran a beer mile in this time in the off season. You should try and beat that." And it was just necessarily it was word of mouth because internet didn't exist.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and then over time, as the internet came about, there's forums and people compared times online through that. And then maybe in the off season or after an event, people would do head-to-head matches, but it was all underground until like a couple years back, probably a
yeah,
decade
yeah,
ago. And then that's when they started having these international competitions. So where I sort of fit into that, it was my second year of university. We tried one in the off season for fun with our team, and everyone's like, "You're gonna have to go really easy. Don't go too hard; it'll catch up to you." And I did my first one, and although it was uncomfortable, very hard, uh, I didn't feel like it was as hard as they sort of made it out to be. But I was so focused on athletics, it was like I'm never gonna do this again. This
yeah,
is
yeah,
a one time thing, whatever. And then kept pursuing track. Was very focused on my studies as well, and I started seeing these flow track competitions for the beer mile, these world classic competitions, and then I was like, I feel like I could like be good at this. I know I can chug, I know I can run. I've done one before. I know there's room to improve, but
yeah, yeah,
there's no real point in me doing one. Like it doesn't mean anything to me.
yeah, yeah.
So friend came over, he brought a six pack, he put it on my table at the end of my off season. He said, "We're going to the track, we're trying to beer mile, and we're filming it." So him and my twin brought me to the track. I did a beer mile there, and then we taped it, and I was 4:39 at the time, so I think it bettered the world record by about 8 seconds. And
Wow.
24 hours later, I was on a plane to England to compete at the World Classic
It's
in London, England.
incredible.
So
That
crazy.
is incredible. So someone had seen that video and invited you over to England to compete?
Yeah, so I didn't even know it lined up. I wasn't trying to go to that competition at all. I was just my friend wanted me to do a beer mile, and it worked out that the timing for that event was that upcoming weekend.
Wow.
So I flew into England for 50 hours total, broke the world record again, and then that's where I became a beer mile guy, I guess, and it's taken off since.
Well, yeah, because I see a few people now that pop up on my Instagram and on socials, and it's I've just run a BML or I've just done this, and I'm like, this is amazing. And then obviously seen yourself and watched a few of the videos, and I'm like, this is incredible. This is a sport I wish I'd been involved with as a child myself. I could have got into this. I mean, I would have been rubbish because, as I said, I'm the worst runner in the world. But that, what is it like? Then is there specific beers that you have to use when you're doing it? Do the event promoters, the organizers, do they provide a certain type of beer? Can you choose your own?
Yeah, so usually the event will have some sort of like generic beer. Maybe it's a sponsored
Yeah, yeah.
beer based on the location.
Okay.
But they ha do have specifics, so you can either use cans or bottles.
Right.
Bottles are definitely quicker if you tip a
Yeah.
bottle upside down or as opposed to a can.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think the neck of the bottle makes it come out a bit quicker. But you can use 5% beer. It just has to be 355 milliliters. Can't be a side or anything. And throughout those specifics, you can sort of choose whatever kind of beer you want. So,
Wow. And I'm assuming that over the years you've had to practice and go, yeah, this one's better for me, or this one's not better for me, or do you just not care?
no, I honestly I haven't practiced really with anything specific. It's more or less like I know I can chug, I know I have a strong stomach, and I have a beer sponsor now, thankfully, that makes me a beer I enjoy during the
Oh
race.
wow,
But before that, it was just more or less like going to a liquor store in Canada and asking them for a
that's
smooth
brilliant.
5% beer.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, I think the world record was a Blue Moon, and I know that's probably not too gassy, and it's probably a little bit easier to drink, and maybe it doesn't do as much issues to the stomach when you're running.
Yeah.
And so that's why I was genuinely wondering whether or not there was a specific kind of a beer that you like better to do, or you're just not bothered. um, you went from this mindset for nearly 8 years that actually I'm going to be an elite athlete. I'm going to be in the Olympics. All of a sudden, different doors of one door's closed and the other door's opened. How was running this beer mile? I'm not going to say has it changed your life, but what opportunities has it presented because you've went and broke world records?
Yeah, I think ultimately like the sponsorships, it's created like um more of a brand for myself. And then yeah, I mean working with Adidas, nutrition companies, like sports tape companies, beer companies, obviously. So it's definitely changed. I mean, at first, it was sort of an identity crisis. Didn't want to admit I was a beer mile. I kind of hit it under the wraps. Didn't
Right.
acknowledge it really,
Really?
because I was pursuing athletics, so I thought it was
Yeah,
a
yeah.
bit of a parody towards that.
Okay.
And some people still might see it that way, but I think at the end of the day, I am a very competitive athlete. I'm competitive in everything I do, and the beer mile is something that has presented great opportunities to me. So it's like if I get on the start line, I'm not training for it per se, but when I get on the start line, I'm gonna make sure
Mm.
I give it everything I can.
I mean, when you say that, people maybe look at it as a bit of a parody or whatnot, but the times that you're posting, the fact that you're drinking 4 beers at the same time as well, those times are still incredibly quick. That there'll be national athletes who still wouldn't hit those times for a mile
Hmm.
before four
Yeah.
beers. Um, it's absolutely crazy. What's been the best thing to come out of that transition to the BMI? And as you say, you've created your own brand now. You are the BMI world record holder. What's been the one takeaway from it, other than free beer?
Um, I mean, Adidas has been very, very generous. So
Really?
I have probably a lifetime supply of shoes now, which has been amazing.
Wow.
Especially like I'm going through shoes quite often. I run 100 plus kilometers a week, year round. So
Wow.
I do go through quite a bit of shoes. And then other than that, I've just honestly been thankful for the people I've met throughout the beer mile. So I think a lot of people would assume like it's degenerates, it's frat boys, whatever in the beer mile, but a lot of these guys are like lawyers, there's doctors, there's
Yeah.
uh, a guy that works for NASA. There's a lot
Wow.
of very like smart people. There's um yeah, a very diverse group of people that do the beer mile. So I think connecting with those individuals has been like the coolest takeaway from like competing in these events.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I mean, I think anyone, maybe anyone who isn't in the athletics world, you just look at the times that are being posted when you watch the videos around and you go, these are serious athletes who are taking part because you don't run those times unless you're a serious athlete and you train for
Hmm.
something. So, I mean, when you train for this now, I'm assuming you're not just running beer miles all the time. You said you're running quite
No.
regularly. Do you do you have to consciously train just before big competitions come up? And do you have consciously just run a beer mile, or is it just a case you only save the beer mile for the beer mile competition?
Yeah, I honestly don't want to. I know it hurts. I know it's uncomfortable. I've done enough to know that, but I do one, maybe two a year,
Right.
um, that I participate in, and maybe the day before I'll do one chug just to make sure I still have that ability. Otherwise, I'm just training
Yeah,
purely
yeah.
for speed, power, and endurance. So, yeah, none of my workouts incorporate any kind of chugging or drinking or anything like that. It's more or
It's
less like
brilliant.
hoping
I
I
love
have
it.
it on race day.
Yeah, yeah. And I think about it from a from when I used to compete, drinking alcohol was just something that I very rarely did. It was like, especially if you got your world championships at the end of the year, wherever it might be, sometimes I've seen like go 6 to 9 months without touching alcohol. So I know that if I had one or two beers after not drinking for so long, it would impact on me hugely, even just the way I felt. Or maybe do you see some very funny situations when you do the beer mile where all of a sudden that second or third beer starts to kick in?
I would say more or less like after. I think during you're just so consumed with the chaos of what's going on,
Right.
um, that afterwards, say 15, 20 minutes, it does hit you quite hard because you got to think you're chugging three
Yeah, yeah.
pounds of beer in less than four, like 5 minutes. So
Yeah.
yeah, you
It's
can
unreal.
imagine how that feels after you're feeling pretty giddy, pretty good. Definitely a little bubbly.
No, it's absolutely phenomenal. I mean, what are the motivations? What are the dreams moving forward? And you talk about you're obviously a professional now, but you're also a professional athlete who's sponsored by Adidas, different beer companies. What's your aims and objectives now moving forward?
Trying new things, trying new distances, trying new events. So I actually did my first half Ironman a couple
Wow,
weeks ago. So I will certainly pursue another one of those and definitely try and better my time. Aside from that, I'm going to do my first half marathon, competitive half marathon in October, so in the fall.
wow,
So yeah, taking some of my things I've learned in track onto the roads and into triathlon. Um, that's sort of my biggest focus. Just changing up, having fun, and being competitive in those spaces that I'm still learning.
yeah, yeah. Wow. And when talk about half marathons, we actually have the largest half marathon in the world here in the northeast of England. I
Damn.
think I think since its inception, it's had over
Wow,
a
that's pretty
million
incredible.
runners take part. And it happens every year. It's absolutely huge. It's a phenomenal event. What would be your advice for a young person? Because you've been through quite the experiences when you think about going from being a national athlete, looking at Olympics, to to then, as you say, perspective changing, but new opportunities open themselves up. What would be your one piece of advice to a young person or someone who is in sport and is maybe heavily invested in one target?
Yeah, I guess sometimes in a competitive like competitive sport, you can become very consumed with it. I think it's best to sort of find, I know it's generic to say, but find your balance of healthy balance of everything. So social life, job, family. You got to focus on the things that matter aside from athletics because it'll make that athletic experience so much more fun, so much more enjoyable. And then also finding ways to make the competitive nature of what you're doing fun. So whether it's training with different people, training in different environments, whether it's something as simple as downloading a podcast or a certain um, album while you're running and making it fun that way. I just think as long as you keep increasing how much fun you're having, you'll find success in working hard.
No, amazing. Corey, thank you so much for coming on Hobby of a Lifestyle. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you for sharing your journey.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.